It was supposed to be a joke. Just a harmless prank. I had no idea it would spiral into this. I'd been feeling restless for weeks. Mark and I were caught in the same monotonous routine we'd fallen into over the past year. Every morning, we woke up, went through the motions, and by the time the evening came, we'd both retreat to our respective corners of the house, exhausted and silent. Our once vibrant conversations had turned into short, functional exchanges. "What's for dinner? Did you pay the electricity bill? I'm going to bed early tonight." It wasn't that we didn't love each other. We did, I think. But love, sometimes, just wasn't enough. I needed more, and I wasn't sure what it was. But in that moment, I thought a little humor, a little unpredictability, might be just what we needed to break the tension. Something to shake things up. Something to remind us of the spark that used to light up our relationship. I hadn't planned it out, not fully. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I only wanted to see his reaction, a little laugh at the absurdity of it. So I told him about the secret. I could tell by the way he looked at me when I started the story that he was intrigued, maybe even a little concerned. I told him I had found an old letter, something from years ago, that mentioned a woman from his past. A woman he'd never mentioned before. And she wasn't just any woman. She was someone he had been serious with, someone who'd apparently meant a lot to him. My heart wasn't in it, but I played it up, feigning disbelief, pretending to feel hurt and confused. It was a lie, of course. Just a little trick to see if he cared. If he cared enough to feel the sting of betrayal, if he would fight to reassure me. But as I watched his face, I started to second-guess myself. His eyes narrowed, his expression darkened. The playful, teasing look I was expecting never came. Instead, he stood up from the couch and started pacing the room, his jaw clenched. "Where did you hear that? What the hell is this about?" he asked, his voice sharp. It was the kind of tone I hadn't heard from him in months. I tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Mark, it's just a joke." "I thought you'd," he cut me off, his hand held up as if to stop me from speaking. "You think this is funny?" I froze. The room felt cold, despite the heat from the radiator. His face was flushed, his eyes wide with something I couldn't read. I realized too late that my little game had gone too far. I was playing with fire, but I hadn't expected to get burned. "Mark, it's just a prank," I said, trying to defuse the tension. I didn't mean, but he didn't let me finish. Without another word, he grabbed his jacket from the coat rack and left the house. The door slammed behind him, and I stood there, stunned. The silence that followed was suffocating. I kept telling myself it was just a misunderstanding. He would come back, we'd talk it through, and I'd explain. But as the hours stretched on, the panic in my chest grew heavier. He hadn't called, hadn't sent a message. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, silent, mocking me. I went over the events in my head. Had I pushed too far? Had I misjudged him? I was so sure that a joke would bring us closer, but all it had done was drive a wedge between us. Maybe he didn't find it funny. Maybe he didn't see the humor in it the way I did. I tried to distract myself. I watched TV, scrolled through my phone, paced the kitchen. But the thought of Mark, somewhere out there, angry and confused, gnawed at me. He had always been a quiet guy, but this wasn't like him. He wasn't the type to leave without saying anything. And yet, that's exactly what he had done. I sent him a message around midnight, my fingers trembling as I typed. "Mark, I'm really sorry. It was just a joke. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please come back." Nothing. No reply. The night dragged on, and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. I had hoped the prank would break the tension, but instead, it had exposed just how fragile everything was between us. Mark and I had been together for 5 years, and I'd always believed that love was enough. But now, I wasn't so sure. I had crossed a line, and the reality of it hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a symptom of something deeper, something I hadn't wanted to face. Maybe our relationship wasn't as solid as I thought. Maybe there were cracks in the foundation that I had ignored. I lay there, wide awake, the emptiness of the house surrounding me. The bed felt cold without him beside me. I wanted to call him, but I didn't want to push him further away. So, I waited. But waiting didn't make the hurt go away. Hours passed, and as the sun started to rise, I made a decision. I couldn't just let this go. I needed to fix it, to make it right. But I had no idea how. The morning came, but Mark didn't. I waited in the silence of our empty house, each tick of the clock echoing louder than the last. The sun streamed through the window, casting a pale light over the living room. It felt wrong, like everything was out of place. I kept thinking about how easily everything had shifted. One moment, I was laughing, thinking of a harmless prank to break the tension between us. The next, I was sitting alone, trying to understand how something so small could unravel everything. I couldn't sit still. I had called him again, sent a few more messages, but nothing. My phone was still silent, the little icon next to his name showing me no signs of life. My heart was heavy with guilt, but there was something else too, something more pressing. I felt the absence of Mark in a way I couldn't explain. He wasn't just physically gone, it was like something inside him had left as well. It wasn't just the prank, I realized. It was everything that had been building up for months. I could feel the truth slowly creeping into my mind. We hadn't been right for a while now. The spark I once felt with Mark, the joy of simply being in each other's company, had faded. We were two people living side by side, but not really living together. And the worst part? I had ignored it. For months, maybe even years, I had convinced myself that love would be enough to patch up the cracks we were both trying to hide. I had thought that if we could just have some fun again, everything would snap back into place. But now, I saw it clearly. The foundation we were standing on wasn't as strong as I had believed. I made breakfast, though I wasn't really hungry. The eggs were burned, the coffee lukewarm. I tried to force myself to focus on something, anything, that wasn't Mark, but it didn't work. I kept thinking about the night before. His face, twisted in disbelief and anger. The way he stormed out of the house without saying a word, leaving me standing there, vulnerable and lost. It wasn't just the prank, was it? It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was everything. I'd made a mistake, but now I was seeing the bigger picture. He hadn't just been upset by the joke. He was upset because I hadn't seen him, not truly. We had been drifting apart, and I hadn't noticed how far we'd fallen until I tried to pull him back with something as trivial as a prank. I grabbed my phone again, hesitating as my finger hovered over the screen. Should I call him? Apologize again? Or should I wait, give him space like he needed? The thought of him getting further away, of losing him completely, made me feel sick to my stomach. But what was I supposed to say? I didn't know how to fix it, and I didn't even know if he wanted it fixed. The phone buzzed in my hand, making me jump. For a brief moment, I thought it was Mark. But it wasn't. It was Emma, my best friend. I stared at her name for a second, wondering if I should answer. She knew I'd been having problems with Mark for a while now, but I hadn't told her about the prank. I hadn't told anyone. I didn't want to sound stupid. I answered the call. "Hey, how are you?" Emma's voice was warm and concerned, as always. I could hear the faint sound of traffic in the background, a comforting reminder that life outside of my little world was still going on. "Not great," I replied, the words coming out before I could stop them. "Mark, he left last night. After I played this prank, and now I can't get a hold of him." There was a long pause on the other end. "What kind of prank?" Emma asked carefully, as if trying to gauge how bad this could be. I took a deep breath and explained everything. I told her about the letter, the woman from Mark's past that didn't exist, and how I thought it would be funny to get a reaction from him. When I finished, there was silence. Emma didn't speak right away, and I could tell she was trying to figure out how to respond. "Sarah," she said gently, "you know that's not the kind of thing you joke about, right?" I winced, hearing the disappointment in her voice. "I know. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand, but nothing," she interrupted. "You need to stop thinking of it as just a prank. It's not. This is about trust, and you played with something that really matters to him. You need to take responsibility for that." I felt my stomach drop. I knew she was right, but hearing it out loud made everything worse. I had messed up. Badly. "Do you think he'll come back?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't even sure if I was asking her or myself. "I don't know," Emma said softly. "But if he does, you're going to have to do more than just apologize. You're going to have to prove to him that you're willing to face the things you've been avoiding. That means talking about what's really going on in your relationship, not just brushing it under the rug." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I hadn't been willing to face the truth, hadn't wanted to admit how much I'd been hiding from myself. And now, it had all come to a head. "I'll try," I whispered. "Thanks, Emma." After hanging up, I sat in the silence of the house once more. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, all of them tangled and overlapping. I wanted to fix things, but I didn't know where to start. And what if he didn't want to fix it at all? I glanced at the clock. It was nearly noon. I hadn't heard from Mark in over 12 hours, and with every passing minute, the distance between us felt wider. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe this wasn't just about a prank. Maybe it was about the things we hadn't been saying to each other, the things we'd both been avoiding. I needed to face it all. I had no other choice. The afternoon passed in a blur, each minute blending into the next as I sat in the same spot, my phone still silent. I had told myself I wouldn't call him again, that I would wait for him to come to me, but my patience was wearing thin. Every minute without hearing from Mark felt like an eternity, the empty space between us growing larger and larger. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, putting away things that had been left untouched for weeks. The house felt empty without him. There was no sound of his footsteps, no quiet hum of the TV in the background, no casual conversation about nothing in particular. The absence of his presence was overwhelming, and it made the weight of everything I had avoided for so long feel even heavier. I found myself standing in front of our bookshelf, running my fingers over the spines of old books we had collected over the years. I paused at a photo album, one that we had started together on our honeymoon. The pictures inside were filled with smiles and laughter, memories that felt like a lifetime ago. I couldn't help but feel a pang of longing as I flipped through the pages, wishing I could turn back time, wishing I could undo the moment when I thought it would be funny to play a prank on him. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of who could be at the door. My heart skipped a beat as I realized it might be Mark, but when I opened the door, it wasn't him. It was Sarah, my neighbor, holding a bag of groceries in one hand and a worried look on her face. "Hey, Sarah," I said, trying to sound normal even though my heart was racing. "What's up?" "I just wanted to check on you," she said softly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "You've been quiet all day, and I thought I'd bring you some food. Is everything okay?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm fine. Just a little tired, I guess." She raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "You don't look fine. And you're not the type to just sit around all day. What's going on?" I didn't want to tell her. I didn't want to admit the mess I had created. But as I looked at her, I realized I couldn't hide it anymore. She was one of the few people who knew how hard I had been trying to make things work with Mark. She had seen the cracks before I had, and now she was standing here, waiting for me to open up. I sighed, feeling the weight of my own guilt. "It's Mark. He left. I messed up. I played a prank on him, and he didn't think it was funny. He left, and now I can't get a hold of him." Sarah's expression softened. "Oh, honey. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was that bad." I bit my lip, trying to hold back tears. "It's not just the prank. It's everything. We've been drifting apart for so long, and I didn't even see it. I thought if I could just make him laugh, everything would go back to normal, but now it's all falling apart. I don't know what to do." She walked over to the couch and sat down, patting the spot beside her. "Come here. Sit with me." I did as she asked, sinking into the couch next to her. She handed me a tissue, and I wiped my eyes, feeling more vulnerable than I had in a long time. "You know," Sarah said softly, "I've seen the way you two have been lately. You've been so focused on keeping everything together, but sometimes, you need to acknowledge when things aren't right. You can't fix something if you don't recognize that it's broken." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so focused on trying to keep up appearances, on convincing everyone, including myself, that everything was fine, that I hadn't realized how far gone we really were. "I don't even know how to talk to him about it," I admitted. "Every time I try, it feels like we're just talking in circles. There's so much resentment building up, and I don't know how to get past it." Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. "You have to start with the truth. Don't try to fix things with jokes or distractions. Tell him how you really feel, and listen to how he feels. It's not going to be easy, but it's the only way you're going to get through this." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm scared. What if he doesn't want to fix it? What if he doesn't even care anymore?" Sarah's gaze softened, and she leaned in closer. "You won't know unless you try. And if he doesn't care, then you'll know. But you have to try. You owe it to both of you to have that conversation." I sat there for a long time, the silence between us heavy with unspoken thoughts. The truth was, I didn't know if I was ready to hear the answer, but Sarah was right. I had to face it. If I wanted to fix this, if I wanted to salvage what was left of my relationship with Mark, I had to stop running from the truth. "I'm going to call him," I said, my voice shaking. "I have to. I can't keep waiting for him to come to me." Sarah smiled at me, giving me a reassuring nod. "You'll be okay. Whatever happens, at least you'll know you tried." I stood up, feeling a sense of resolve settle over me. It was time to face the reality I had been avoiding for too long. It was time to pick up the pieces and see if there was anything worth saving. As I reached for my phone, I felt a surge of anxiety. I wasn't sure if he would answer, if he even wanted to hear from me. But I couldn't let that stop me. I had to try. For both of us. I hit his number and waited, the ringing in my ears growing louder with each passing second. Would he pick up? Would he listen? Or was this the beginning of the end? The phone kept ringing. Each ring felt like an eternity, stretching out in front of me as I held the device tightly in my hand. My breath was shallow, my palms sweating, and my heart raced with each passing second. What was I expecting? For him to pick up and apologize? For everything to be magically fixed? I didn't know. All I knew was that I had to try. I had to make this right, or at least try to understand what had gone so wrong. Just when I thought I could not take it anymore, there was a click on the other end. My heart skipped a beat. I opened my mouth, but the words stuck. My throat tightened, and for a second, I wondered if I had the strength to say anything at all. Hello? His voice sounded distant, like he had been preoccupied, like he hadn't been waiting for my call at all. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. Mark, it's me. There was a pause, followed by a sigh. I know. The silence that followed was unbearable. I wanted to say something, anything to break it, but I was afraid of what might come out. Was he angry? Hurt? Did he even care anymore? I didn't mean for everything to get so messed up, I finally managed to say, my voice small. I didn't think the prank would make you leave. I thought you'd laugh. I didn't think it would cause all of this. There was a long pause before he spoke again. You really didn't think it would cause this? You think I just walk out because of a joke? I winced at the hurt in his voice. Of course, it wasn't just about the joke. I knew that. It had never been just a joke. It was about everything that had been building up for months, maybe even years. But I didn't know how to say that without sounding like I was blaming him. I don't know, I said, my voice cracking slightly. I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe if I could make you laugh, everything would go back to the way it was before. I've been feeling so distant from you. I thought if I could just make things lighter, it would fix everything. You can't fix everything with a joke, he said, his voice sharp, but there was a weariness to it now. It's not about the joke. It's about how you've been treating me. About how we've been treating each other. This isn't just about some stupid prank. It's about the fact that we haven't been okay for a long time. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but something in his tone made it clear that there was more going on beneath the surface, something deeper than I had been willing to admit. I didn't mean for it to get like this, I whispered, feeling the tears start to burn at the back of my eyes. I didn't. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything, Mark said, his voice quieter now, almost resigned. We can't keep pretending like everything is fine when it's not. I don't know how to keep going like this. I sat down on the couch, my legs feeling weak beneath me. I had never heard him sound so defeated. And it broke me. Then what do we do? I asked, my voice trembling. What happens now? There was another pause before he spoke, his words slow, measured. I don't know. I need time to think. I need space to figure out what I want. I felt the air leave my lungs. Time? Space? Did that mean he was walking away for good? I understand, I whispered. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but they were the only ones that felt right. I don't want to push you into anything. I just want to make things right. I want to fix this. Maybe we can try, he said, his voice softer now, but still distant. But I don't know if it'll be enough. I didn't know what to say to that. I felt like I was hanging on to him with nothing but thin threads. I wanted to ask him if he loved me still, if he could ever look at me the same way, but I was afraid. Afraid of the answer. I just want you to know. I'm sorry, I said again, my voice thick with emotion. I know it's not enough. I know I've messed up. But I love you. I don't want to lose you. There was silence on the other end for a moment, and I wondered if he had hung up. But then he spoke again, his voice soft and low. I know you do, he said. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm not ready to give up just yet. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It wasn't a resolution, but it was something. A small glimmer of hope in the darkness. It was a start. I'll give you the space you need, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. And when you're ready, we'll talk. Really talk. No more games. No more pretending. Mark was silent for a long time before he spoke again. Okay. Okay, I echoed, the weight of his response sinking in. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a solution. But it was something. The conversation ended shortly after that, and I was left staring at my phone, the weight of everything settling over me like a heavy blanket. It wasn't over. Not yet. But it was far from fixed. I had no idea what the next step would be, or even if there was a next step. But for the first time in days, I felt like I wasn't completely alone in this. There was a crack in the door, just a sliver of light, and maybe, just maybe, it was enough to begin to find my way back. As I set the phone down, I felt the tears finally spill over, but this time, they weren't just from sadness. They were from relief, from the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild what had been broken. We have reached the end of another beautiful story, and if you like and comment on this video, YouTube will understand your taste better and deliver more content like this. If you liked our content, subscribe to our channel.